Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right in today because we are demystifying the forward-deployed engineer. We're going to be unpacking one of the most exciting, truly high-stakes roles in the modern tech landscape. It's a position that's absolutely transforming how cutting-edge technology actually gets used in the wild. So let's just dive straight into it.
So I want to start by posing a question that's honestly been driving the tech industry crazy for decades. Think about it. Why does perfect, beautifully written software often completely fail when it finally reaches a customer's organization? We see this literally all the time. These brilliant enterprise platforms and next-gen AI models get hyped up, they're sold to a massive corporation, and then they just sit there. They totally fail to deliver any actual business value. Why is that?
Well, the answer lies in what we call the tech deployment gap. You see, software is typically built in pristine, highly controlled laboratory environments. But real-world customer environments, they are incredibly messy. They're totally chaotic, loaded with legacy systems, strict regulatory constraints, and this highly idiosyncratic business logic that no developer in Silicon Valley could have ever predicted. There's just this massive gap between a standardized product and a bespoke business reality. In reality, trying to navigate these complex data environments is a lot like untangling a massive, high-noise matrix of tangled wires and legacy integrations. Generic off-the-shelf software simply cannot navigate that kind of chaos without a human bridge. You can't just hand over a login and expect a client to magically restructure this matrix all by themselves. You really need someone on the inside. And that is where the forward-deployed engineer, or FDE, comes in. Now, the term actually comes from the military, where highly specialized units are stationed right up close to the front lines for much faster intelligence gathering and response times. In the tech world, an FDE is a hybrid software engineer who is embedded directly with the customer. They aren't sitting back at headquarters. They are right there on the front lines, configuring platforms and building custom, tailored solutions to solve the customer's absolute toughest operational problems. Let's compare this really quick, so we can see how it builds on standard tech rules. A traditional software engineer, your classic dev, is typically focused on building a single, highly scalable capability that's going to be used by thousands or maybe millions of different customers. An FDE works in the exact opposite direction. They focus on enabling many different capabilities and workflows for a single specific customer. They make sure the software adapts to the user, not the other way around. Now you might be thinking, wait, isn't that just a solutions architect? Well, not quite. The really crucial difference here is that while a solutions architect is fantastic at designing the technical blueprints and mapping out strategy, an FDE is fundamentally a hands-on builder. They don't just hand over a slide deck with some recommendations. They write the scripts, they configure the APIs, and they literally ship production-grade code to execute those designs right inside the customer's live environment. Which brings us to Section 1, the ultimate hybrid skill set. Surviving on these technical front lines requires a pretty massive blend of abilities. On the technical side, you've got to be a heavy hitter, writing back-end code in Python or Java, deploying to AWS or GCP, handling Docker containers, and systematically debugging live production systems. But here's the catch. You have to pair that technical firepower with intense customer empathy, top-tier communication skills, and the ability to translate totally ambiguous business needs into crisp technical problem statements. You have to be able to talk to a non-technical stakeholder, truly understand their pain, and then turn around and write the code to fix it. There's this brilliant quote from Guillaume Esnault, a field CTO, that perfectly summarizes the FDE DNA. He says, "A pure engineer might not be capable of talking to the business, or a consultant who doesn't code can't make quick changes. The success of this role is in the combination of skill sets." That hits the nail on the head. You absolutely cannot just be great at coding or just be great with customers. To succeed here, you literally have to seamlessly blend the two.
Moving on to Section 2, a day in the trenches.
So, while no 2 days are exactly alike, they typically follow this incredibly rapid, high-stakes cycle. First, a large chunk of the day is deeply technical. You're designing, writing, and testing workflows or data pipelines. Next comes the human element. You're directly collaborating with end users, running meetings, and translating new requirements. Finally, because you are responsible for live systems, you might suddenly have to pivot to investigate a production outage, find the root cause, and deploy a fix, all while actively communicating what's happening to the client. It is wildly fast-paced. And the technical pressure they face on a daily basis is immense. According to engineers at companies like Palantir, an FDE might be tasked with building a terabyte-scale data pipeline for a mission-critical workflow one day. The very next day, they might be figuring out how to configure a platform to meet incredibly strict government regulatory access controls. Or they might be systematically debugging a random 50% latency spike in production, or even designing entirely new ways for non-technical users to visualize high-noise data. They have to be incredibly creative on the fly.
But here's a fascinating detail that actually surprises a lot of people. If you know typical software engineers, you know they'd usually rather walk on hot coals than write documentation. But great FTEs, they are essentially 70% engineer and 30% technical writer. Because you're deploying these complex solutions into completely unique environments, you have to master documentation. You are constantly writing implementation guides, drafting requests for comments on complex architecture, and clearly explaining your debugging processes to stakeholders who might not know how to read a single line of code.
And that leads us right into Section 3, bridging product and reality. You can really think of an FDE as a strategic product discovery loop that is embodied in a single person. They go into a client site and map out these hidden workflows and constraints that literally nobody else sees. Then, they rapidly build what industry insiders call gravel road solutions. Now, these aren't perfectly polished features yet, but they are highly functional, custom solutions that deliver immediate, measurable impact. This compresses the whole traditional consult, translate, build cycle down to almost zero. And most importantly, they feed these patterns back to headquarters so those gravel roads can be hardened into reusable, core product features for everybody else. The ultimate advantage of this whole model is speed. By keeping the discovery of the problem and the execution of the code so tightly linked in one role, customers just aren't waiting on drawn-out IT projects. They don't have to endure years of waiting for a systems integrator to finish customizing off-the-shelf software. Instead, they get rapid, iterative impact. They're often seeing working version 1 solutions in a matter of weeks, not years. So, if you take away anything from this explainer, make it this. FDEs are not just some resource that a client buys to maintain a system. They are the actual mechanism for delivering measurable business impact. The end goal isn't just to deploy engineers for the sake of it. It's to sustainably and successfully integrate advanced technology, like next-generation AI, into a company's totally unique business logic and ensure it actually works out there in real conditions. Which leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative thought to chew on. We've seen just how demanding, how fast-paced, and wildly impactful this role is. It requires you to be a master of the full technical stack, a brilliant communicator, and a deeply empathetic problem solver, all at the exact same time. It really is the new operating system for how modern tech enterprises deploy solutions. So looking at your own skills and passions, do you have that unique hybrid DNA required to be a forward-deployed engineer? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.